Hello, welcome back to the Craftmansion. I'm David, and in today's video I will show you how I made Sting from Lord of the Rings. This is different than the one shown in The Hobbit, and I will explain later. And hey, if you like Lord of the Rings and swords, drop a like. So let's start the video with the intro. Until then I'll drink my tea. So, I'm going to start off with this template, and for this sword I will be using foam board, not exactly this piece because as you can see it's not large enough, although this sword is pretty small, that's what she said. I started by copying the whole image twice on the foam board, then I also copied the hilt twice on its own, and finally 2 more times for the part of the crossguard with Tengwar on it. Once I cut all the parts, I glued them together with white glue. Then, this part goes on the right side of the crossguard. I marked where the handle ended, and then I rounded the handle to a nice oval shape. To have a smoother curve, I removed the top layer of paper. I marked the thickness I needed to cut from the handguard by using the edge of a paper like a bendy ruler. Using the guides I drew, I beveled the crossguard. Now remember, the right part has to stay on a higher level than the left side. Once all the details were done, I refined the edges with my Dremel tool. I also sanded the handle so as to remove the distinction created with the cardboard between each layer of foam board. I literally had to vacuum myself and Rick and Morty. I marked where the bevel of the blade started, that's sort of like a V shape, and then I cut the first layer of paper. Now I love working with foam board because it has a certain strength to it, but the problem is that the foam is quite soft in itself. What makes it strong is you have cardboard, foam, and then cardboard. So with the blade there will be a little problem when we take off the first layer of paper and the first layer of paper. But since this is a short sword, it shouldn't be that much of a problem. So now let's take off the first layer of paper. Voila! Oh. I marked the center of the blade and then beveled it. To make a cleaner bevel, I sanded it down. Yeah, remember when I said it would work? Scrap that, it didn't. I'm gonna leave it like this. It's short enough to be sturdy. It looks like a flabby. To copy patterns from pictures, I turned off all the light in the room. And then, I used a blank white screen on my phone and traced the picture on a plain piece of paper. Now of course, a light box would be better, but until I buy or make one, my phone will have to do. Then I switched on the light to copy the image properly from some online references. So now the basic shape is finished, and now it's time to move on to the details. I made this template for you. It has all the details, the leafy pattern. Then there's also the Tengwar that goes on the blade and the handguard. So you can get this template by contacting me on Facebook or Instagram on the Craftmansion. They should be over here or this side. Anyways, so when you print this template, cut away this part and then photocopy it twice. You have some more space, and photocopy it twice. As you can see, I'm not that good with a photocopier. I made lots of mistakes. Yeah, first I photocopied these on this, and then I copied the smallest part twice on a thin piece of cardboard by pressing hard over the lines, and then copying that same design from the indents on the cardboard. I cut all the different parts, and then, using super glue, I put everything in place on the photocopies I had printed. While the super glue dried, I gave the whole sword a layer of Mod Podge. I switched on a fan to make the Mod Podge dry faster. That fan, by the way, it's about 25 years old. So this is just a side note. Between layers of Mod Podge, always lightly sand the previous layer so that you always work on a flat surface. I marked the outline of the main part of the Thangoar inscription with a fine liner. Now the whole inscription reads Maignas ein Esternin, Dagnirian Jungulim, which means Sting is my name, I am the spider's bane. This inscription is what distinguishes Sting from the version in The Hobbit. In The Hobbit there's just a single line going along the blade, and the sword had no name. Bilbo used it to attack giant spiders at Mirkwood, releasing Thorin's company in the process, and hence it got the name Sting, as it is the spider's bane. Later on, when, in the Lord of the Rings, Bilbo goes to live in Rivendell with the elves wrote the inscription, and then Bilbo passed the sword to Frodo. The inscription isn't just written, it's indented into the blade, so I went over the letters again with a biro while pressing on the foam. Then I glued on the rest of the inscription. Oh! Now all the parts are ready. I still need to give it some more coatings of Mod Podge, but that's for later. The only part that's missing is the pommel. Now the pommel has more of a 3D shape. Yes, this is all 3D, but the pommel is more rounded. So I'm going to use this air drying clay. This clay is quite old, but it's been packaged nicely and it's still soft. Well, soft-ish. I can add some water and it will come back into its original state. The last time I used this, it was in... I used it for the Longclaw sword, so it was 11 months ago. It was 14th April 2019. That's the year ago me. Oh god, it looks so different. I have short hair, for one, and I used to film in my bedroom. So while these dry, I will start putting on the pommel so it can dry as well. There's some water so I can work easier, just use these. After many attempts, I finally managed to get a rough shape off of which I could start. So I made a huge mess as usual, but hopefully it pays off, because as you can see this is not the ideal situation. Now the plan is to let it dry, then try to take it off, and I continue refining it to bring it to this shape. But the past history of this channel shows us that things won't go as planned. So I will let this thing dry, and then I will catch up with you later. When the clay dried a bit more, I refined some of the edges. While the clay continued drying, I applied another 2 layers of Mod Podge. So after this dried, I worked a bit more on the pommel. I know I've let it sit overnight, and so I predicted that this would not easily pop out. Let's see. I don't want to damage it because it's still a bit soft. Nope. So I guess I will have to work on it while it's still on the sword, and also paint the handle and give it the glue and later on the varnish while there's the pommel. So a lesson, plan ahead. The clay now was far easier to work with, but if I made a mistake, it would have been difficult to undo, so be careful here. I gave the handle about 4 total layers of Mod Podge, because it needs to be smoother, but it's really up to you on how much you want to apply. Okay, that's good. I've got this all covered, but I don't know where I'm going to put it. Nope. This is what always happens. I improvise, I try, sometimes I fail. I've got my giant eraser here. So I just went to check the footage and I realized that this bottle was in the way. So this is what I did. I created like a stand. Anyways, this is what I did. I just hung the sword between 2 rulers. And remember, don't grab it by the wet parts. That sounds wrong. Oh god, it sounds so wrong. The pommel still needs to dry, but I went ahead and sprayed the blade with silver. Now the blade's not perfect, there are some imperfections on it. For example, most noticeably are the dots, I guess, dots of spray. But overall, like from the distance, it's quite okay. And it's even stronger with the Mod Podge. Not that flimsy, still flimsy, but not that much. So now it's time to paint the Thangoar that's on the blade and on the handguard. I'm going to start off with the pattern on the blade, and I've mixed some black with some silver. Now I tried using this tiny paintbrush. The plastic just cracked. Okay. but I didn't achieve the effect I wanted, so I'll be using a syringe. Now, if you're not over 18, don't use these. Well, even if you're over 18, if you don't know how to use them, don't, okay? I know I don't look like it, but I'm an adult. Whoa. Stay safe. You have like little poops of paint. Got to be careful. See? There isn't a single video where I don't make a mess. Well, that didn't work. I ended up breaking the syringe. I dislodged the plunger from the rubber. So that's out. So I will resort to the usual method of applying shoe polish. The design is in grey, but I just have black and brown, so this will have to do. This won't be as consistent, but at least it gets some effect when it comes to the deeper areas with the shoe polish. Then I apply some dry brushing with silver. This gives the blade a little more shine after the shoe polish, and it also turns the black inscription into a greyish one. It is worth mentioning that in the movies, the blade turns blue when orcs or goblins are around. This is because this is one of the swords created in the first age by the elves of Gondolin. Along with other swords, Sting must have been lost during the fall of Gondolin and somehow found itself in a troll horde, to then later be rediscovered by Bilbo and the dwarves in the year 2941 of the Third Age, along with Glamdring and Orcrist. The crossguard is darker than the blade, so I mixed some silver and black paint. The pommel was completely dry. You can tell by the fact that it's white, so I sanded it with a very fine sandpaper. I gave the handle a black base coat and then painted the pommel the same color as the crossguard. The brown paint was too thick, so I added some water and brushed over the black paint. This leaves some black paint still showing from underneath. Wood also has some highlights, so I mixed the lighter brown, added a good amount of water to it, and then painted it over some areas. The last layer is brown shoe polish. This might dissolve some paint to reveal the color underneath. Just like some wood would be chipped, showing an inner layer. The handle has two branch patterns, and I provide you with the template. I copied the pattern twice onto foil tape, and then cut them. The fact that it has paper at the back makes it easier when sticking, because I just peeled it bit by bit. I added some last weathering details using black shoe polish, and then covered the whole handle with varnish. This of course excludes the pommel. With this last step, the sword is finished. And that was the whole process behind the sword. This is one of many swords I want to redo. This one I made in 2013, 2014. It's one of the very first swords I made. As you can see, it's very rough, it's larger, it's wider, and it's not that flat. 6-7 years later, I can make this. It just shows you how through practice and learning other methods, you can easily do stuff which when you were younger, you could never thought of doing. From this to this. And to remind you, I do give you templates. I have 2 pages for this project, and you can get them by contacting me on Facebook or Instagram, which are over here. And I'm also thinking about starting a Twitter account. So look forward for that in the future, and I'll tell you when I make the account. On Instagram, I give more frequent updates. I post stories every day, so I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please drop a like. You can also give me suggestions for some future projects. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. I have more videos on this channel, and until then, this is Sting, I'm David, and this is the Craft Mansion.